I can think of 3 to 4 women in my career that really just did what I just described, which is to reach out a hand and lend a hand and maybe have honest discussions or push me. And I do think that has inspired me to pay it forward. It's like when you see that role modeling, when you see that kind of leadership, it's really inspiring. So I really hope to do that in my daily practice with other women. And I think there's a lot of really great pleasure to see other people grow by helping lend a hand and really helping inspire people to maybe take a step that they hadn't thought about.
I'm Jill Avey, a career success coach, and this is SisterSmart Leadership, the show that explores how women can rise from director to vice president and beyond by fully leaning into their feminine energy as their biggest advantage. Let's get you one step closer to the recognition and promotion you deserve. I'm so excited to introduce you to Chumi Khurana, who is the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at J J Oncology. She leads the U.S. sales and marketing teams for the company's growing portfolio of prostate and bladder cancer products. And she's responsible for steering product strategies, market engagement with customers, patients, stakeholders, alliance management, and providing commercial input for business development opportunities. Welcome, Chumi. I'm so glad to have you here to talk with us today.
Jill, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. As we get started, I would love to hear a little bit about your background and your journey to get to this level in your career. And I realized that as we were talking before, that you were born in the UK, raised in Germany, and now you live in the US. So it's quite an international background that you have. And I'm wondering how that background has shaped your experience, particularly when we talk about belonging in your career. I feel like that's something that women can often have struggles with, of feeling like they belong.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, I do have a very international background. I'm of Indian descent. My parents immigrated to England from India. And that's where I was born, in England. And I still hold my British passport, but I'm a very proud US citizen. And I think it's been a real adventure living in different cultures. I think it shapes a lot of who I am, having different cultural experiences. And also being a child of immigrant parents gives you a very unique vantage point in terms of just work ethic, really making sure that my parents proud, right? In terms of the choice they made to leave their country and come abroad. So I think it has shaped me a lot. I did all my schooling really in Germany. So I'm completely fluent in German. I have no accent. And obviously it's a very good party trick because I don't necessarily look German. It was a unique time to grow up there. Back then, there were not a lot of non-Germans in the place I lived in. I grew up in a very small town. I was actually the only non-German in the whole town. So I had a really great childhood, though, in a beautiful place, and grew up going to school there, did my college there. Then I came over here to the US to do my MBA. I didn't really know a soul when I came over here, so it was quite the adventure. And I think that resiliency and really learning a new culture, building a whole new life somewhere where I didn't have a lot of connections made me stronger. And then I actually met my husband very soon after moving here for my MBA, and the rest is history. So I stayed in the US and finished my MBA and actually started in pharma right after that. And I think I've always been very interested in the sciences because my dad's a physician. And so I grew up with a lot of medicine at home. And I think I'm just incredibly lucky that I get to marry my interest in science and breakthrough medicine with my skill sets in business. So that's kind of how I got started in that area. And again, I think probably many women or anybody with a full career, like many people, I didn't set out to do what I do today. I think you make certain choices. I studied international business because I really love the global aspects of things, but it wasn't with a lot of intent that I landed in pharma, and then I kept staying there because I loved it. But I think that's one thing that I like to tell younger women, younger people in their career: follow your interests, be inspired, but doesn't necessarily mean where you're going to end up.
How did you end up in pharmaceuticals then?
It's kind of an interesting, kind of funny story. I was an immigrant to the US. So after graduating from my MBA, I had a temporary work visa. And it was very hard to get anybody to talk to me about jobs because sponsoring someone is a really big deal. And definitely someone entry level, unless you have a very different skill set, was not something that was easy. So I got turned down left and right. And I was pretty discouraged because I was worried I'd have to go back to Germany, and I really wanted to stay a little longer in the US. At that point, I'd already met my husband. So I actually I had family friends, and he was a physician. And through him, I actually met someone that was in the pharmaceutical sales arena. He had a friend that worked in pharmaceutical sales. And I love telling the story because she was actually a relatively senior sales executive, and she just took a liking to me. And she said, "Hey, listen, what do you think about joining pharma in sales?" And I said, "Well, no, I got my MBA. I want to go into marketing. And no, I don't want to do sales." And then she basically told me about how wonderful of a role it was and told me about just the perks of being in sales. And so actually invited me to do a ride along with a sales rep. And I was like, this is really great. And so that's how I started in pharma. So really it was about another more senior woman seeing something in me, reaching across and convincing me, but also giving me the opportunity to go look. She could have very much been like, well, she's not interested, so I'm not going to. But she really invested in me, and I'll forever be grateful for her. And because I had the connection, my company at that point, Bristol Myers Squibb, basically said, "Hey, listen, we'll work with you." It then so happened, though, that I also got married to my husband. So in the end, I got my green card through marriage, and we still joke it's 26 years later that I married him for his green card.
That's an amazing story and so inspiring about how you got your start from another woman who helped you out like that. And to really, I love your point about not just taking no for an answer for her, of helping you to explore a little bit so that you could make a more educated decision there. And look what that opened up for you.
Yeah. And I think, Jill, it's so interesting. I've had very many men in my life from a career perspective that have given me great opportunities too. I can think of 3 to 4 women in my career that really just did what I just described, which is to reach out a hand and lend a hand and maybe have honest discussions or push me. And I do think that has inspired me to pay it forward. It's like when you see that role modeling, when you see that kind of leadership, it's really inspiring. So I really hope to do that in my daily practice with other women. And I think there's a lot of really great pleasure to see other people grow by helping lend a hand and really helping inspire people to maybe take a step that they hadn't thought about.
Yeah, that's incredible. I love that all of the women that have inspired you to keep that circle going. I think it's something that we can all focus on and really helping each other, because the old days were that we were all fighting against each other, and kind of this, sometimes women have a bad reputation for not supporting each other. And that's really something that I know I like to promote, that we can really help each other out.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that stems from, and I think we've made a lot of progress. You asked about belonging, and I want to make sure that I address that. There is, and actually at J&J, our diversity and inclusion motto is "You belong." And I just love that. And as someone who didn't really have, like, when I was in Germany, that I wasn't German. I came from India. I was born in England. It's what I loved about the US a lot, is why I came here, because I felt like there's a lot of people like me that have a multitude of multicultural background. I think easier to belong. But if you think about that in the corporate setting, I think it's something that we need to be very focused on, is how do you make sure that people feel like they can belong. I feel like when I first started out, a lot of the women I saw in higher level positions were kind of really hard to relate to. They were kind of tough and maybe felt like they had to be that way to compete with their male colleagues. But I think we've come a long way where we have started to really embrace different styles. We talk about diversity and inclusion, and it's not just race or gender, it's styles too. Like, how do you embrace different styles, and how do you build teams with those different styles? Because it only makes you stronger if you have different approaches. Not everybody's going to be an extrovert. How do you make sure everybody has a voice and make sure people feel like they belong? I think those are some of the things that we need to be focused on when we're in our career kind of settings and talking about diversity and inclusion. It's also about styles.
Yeah, it's so important. We're thinking about belonging and that inclusive piece. Also, I feel like authenticity comes along with that a lot, where people want to feel like their authentic selves. And as leaders, what you're talking about, how I feel like when I was coming up through the leadership ranks, that's what women were doing, was trying to be like a man and trying to just fit into their world. And it worked in some ways and didn't work in other ways. And I feel like we have a whole new paradigm today that's so much more powerful, where we can use our masculine and feminine strengths. So each of us have both, but we can really lean into what's right for us rather than trying to fit some certain mold. And I'm wondering if you have any reflection on how you were able to find your own authenticity.
That was quite the journey for me. It wasn't the easiest part of my career journey, but also work-life journey. I work to live. I don't live to work, but I love what I do. And so I think a lot of times, growing up in the culture that I did, which is Indian and German, when I first started out, I would say for quite a while, I want to say, for probably the first 8 years or more of my career, I kept work and life completely separate, because I was a certain person at work and then a different person outside of work. And I was very nose to the grindstone, very revered the hierarchy of where I was, and wouldn't bring my personality really to work. I was very engaged in what I wanted to do and very focused on that. And I'll never forget when someone that was a more senior leader said, "We want to hear your voice. We want to know who you are, because when you give us glimpses of that, it's a good thing and you want that." And again, that person probably doesn't even realize the impact they made on me by saying that. And when I started to lead people, I realized that I was much more effective as a leader if I actually brought myself to work and my personality to work, and that you can appropriately do that. There isn't just a work persona and an outside of work persona. And I think that's what you're talking about in terms of authenticity. So that was a journey for me, but I think it was a journey because of culturally maybe how I was raised, of keep your nose to the grindstone, get it, do a good job, everything will happen. But that's not necessarily how it goes. You need to create followership, and you create followership by being authentic and showing vulnerability, showing who you are, being clear about what is good, what's not good, and then being open to having a discussion and debate. I think it's sometimes not easy to be authentic, but I really recommend it strongly, as long as we know how to kind of modulate depending on the situation or where we're at. And I think it's so interesting, Jill. I know that you've talked about this as part of your work, but there's also big generational differences of the people that you're leading and maybe what they're motivated by. And so how do you encourage them to be authentic and kind of meet them where you can motivate them? So I think that's another thing that we need to be incredibly aware of in today's world, where maybe when I started, you just had to kind of flex to whoever was in senior management. Now I think it's very much, let's flex to all levels and make sure that we bridge different styles, like I said, but different generational ways of working to ensure that people can be authentic.
Yeah. And then you're flexing upwards as well, working with boards and things like that, and senior management. Yeah. Wonderful. So you also have two children. And so speaking of authenticity and women, we have families and a lot more responsibilities. And I would love to hear a little bit about some of the decisions we talked earlier. And I know that you at one point worked part-time when you were raising your kids.
Yeah. And it's something that when I tell my story or I meet with people, I just really want to make sure that I share that, because I think sometimes as women, we are like, we got to do it all and got to do it all really well. And we all know how hard that is. I think we can be very hard on ourselves. And this wasn't an easy decision for me. I've always loved my job. I've always wanted to have increased responsibility and grow and learn. And obviously you kind of get started and when you're in a very corporate career environment, it can be like a rat race. You're like kind of on this wheel and you're like, next, what's next? What's next? Keep going, next level, next thing, etc. But when I had my son, who is now almost going to be 21, I actually made the decision, which was very unusual back then. And I'll be forever thankful of my management at Bristol Myers Squibb. I was the first marketer in marketing to request to go part-time. And it so happened that I had a couple colleagues that were right around with me. And so there was a little bit of a groundswell of women at that age that were ready to have children, that were thinking about their options. So yeah, I went part-time, which was unusual and worked well for me. I won't say that it was easy, because in true type A fashion, I wanted to be 100% at home and 100% at work. And that is not how it goes. You really learn how to flex, and you can't be both. You can't be a 100% stay-at-home mom when you're part-time, and you can't be 100% career woman when you're part-time. So I went through a number of different arrangements, from working 3 days, being 2 days off, working 3 days, 1 day remote, which back then was like new, and all these things. But essentially I was in a part-time arrangement to having my son and my daughter, who will be 18 this year. So for about 5 years. And I like telling that story because I think people are a little surprised when they ask me. I get the question of like, how did you get to your level? What did you do? And I love telling the story because I took a little bit of a sidestep, but I'm also proud to say that I got promoted within this arrangement. So I think that is possible, right? Now, was I always the best about not working while I was part-time? Not really. I think I could have probably done a better job at that. But again, what I guess I want to share is I don't think it hurt my long-term career goals. It might have set me on a different path for a little bit, but it was a great choice that I made. And I want to empower other women or share this because I want them to know that there are times when you can give more personally with your kids or your family, or give more at work. Of course, it depends on your partner. I have to say my husband and I are completely 50-50. And that makes it easier for me to do this. Not everybody has that dynamic, but I really think it takes a village. I also had my parents close by. So I had a lot of help from family too.
Yeah. And that's fantastic to be able to get that kind of support from other places. I often see women trying to do it all themselves and not having the support around them, or not even, sometimes they have the support and they're not accepting it too. And so I really see that most of the women who succeed and rise up really do have a lot of support at home. They're not trying to do it all.
Well, that's another thing.
Is that something you noticed as well?
Yeah, that's something that I love really emphasizing and talking about. And I think I shared this with you when you and I met, which is this concept of outsourcing. Again, I think for many of us women, it's like, what do you mean I can't do it all? Why would I outsource? But I think you're working hard. You know, many of us are making a good living. And I think it's very important that you focus on the things that truly matter to you. And again, I learned this lesson from another woman that I worked with who talked to me, and she would joke about this. I outsource everything that I don't want to do, and I do the things that I do want to do. So I took that to heart. And listen, when you're starting out, you might not have the financial means to do that. But as I continue to grow, having someone that helps you clean the house, doing Instacart and having your groceries delivered. Okay, so that tomato is not perfectly ripe. Does that really matter? Do you have a laundry service that you can send things out to? Is there someone that can be a mother's helper that can help run errands? In my case, what I wanted to make space for is the fact that when I got home, I wanted to give my kids a shower. I wanted to be with them. I didn't want to be focused on, at that point, cleaning or sorting or doing other stuff that I didn't really need to do. I really wanted to make sure that I was focused on them. I love to cook, so that I would keep for me to do. I still wanted to work out. So yes, I still do wake up early in the morning to do that. So I think just making sure that you're clear on what do you want to prioritize and what do you maybe not want to prioritize. And then also it being okay if it's not completely perfect, which that's a hard thing. It still is a very hard thing for me.
It is. There's so much social pressure for us to get everything right and to have it all and do it all. And it's just not possible. So this is something we talk about a lot in our program, is how to create balance, what we want to optimize on and what we want to let go of. And this exact conversation of outsourcing and figuring out what makes quality over quantity and what does bring fulfillment to your life, and focus on those things and let go of the rest.
Yeah. And I think young women, young mothers, whether you have kids or not, but let me focus on young mothers for a second. In the beginning, you think this is just a period of time when they're little. Guess what? It continues all the way through. It doesn't get easier. It's just different. The earlier we realize that it's a marathon of, hey, we want to be well-rounded, happy mothers, individuals that have a career, but also are there for our children and our family, not just our children, it's our family. The earlier we realize it's a marathon, the better, because then we can set ourselves up for success. What are the tools you need to make it through that marathon and be successful at the end? I think a lot of people think it's only tough when they're little. That's not true. It's not tough, but it continues.
Yeah. It changes, like you said. Yeah. And now you have, your kids are starting to get to that age where they're launching off into their own lives. How has that changed things for you?
Yeah, I get a little emotional thinking about that. And it's so interesting, Jill, because when my son left for college, I didn't give it much thought, in the sense that I've always been a working mom, and I didn't think it would hit me a certain way. I was just like ready for it. I was proud of him. I felt really good that I'd raised a kid that I could put out in the world that I know would be a functioning young adult. But I had a crazy experience. I dropped him off and we drove away, and I kind of had this like breakdown, and I just did not think that would happen. And I realized that what I was mourning was the loss or the end of the four of us together. So I think it is interesting. Just because we're working women, it doesn't mean that it's easier. And I think what I'm learning now is, as I get ready to be an empty nester next, is I'm trying to be a little bit more thoughtful and prepare for it. You mentioned earlier, Jill, about the things that we give up. Or one thing that I've realized is my 25 years or so have been about my family. I'm very close to all of my family, my parents, my sister, my husband's family, and then my kids, and then work. And so what I'm realizing is, as I'm coming out on the other side with time, even though I have a crazy busy career, I still have like time, because the kids don't need me as much anymore, is friendships. So that's one thing that I've really been working on, is making sure that I'm investing time in my friendships and either rebuilding those or finding additional friendships, and also thinking about other things that I want to do outside of work, which is such a novel. Do you want to take on, in my case, I do community work. I'm on a board, but also is anything that you want to do in addition to, I love to do a lot of things from an athletic perspective, but is there other stuff like from an arts perspective? I took a mosaic class and just exploring to see what am I going to do with that additional kind of time. That's kind of where I'm at now, which is an interesting place to be. But I have some friendships where I keep telling the women, please be patient with me. You know, I know that they have kids that have already left school and left for college. So I'm really trying to put more energy behind that to build friendships.
That's fantastic. Yeah, the connection and creativity are two things I'm hearing there. I'm always encouraging people to focus on friendships as well, because it seems like the thing that's the last to come back, the husband and then the friendships. But I'm really curious about your mosaic class and bringing creativity, and I'm wondering, has that affected your leadership?
Oh, well, not quite yet, Jill. I feel like I might need to be more accomplished around that. I'm a very type A person. My brain is going like 24/7. My husband jokes that I have an on and off switch. There's nothing in between. I'm very regimented in my schedule, which is another thing that helps me with a very demanding job. I'm probably like moving towards bed around 9 o'clock, and most of the time I sleep by 10, but then I wake up at 5 the next morning. I think the one thing that I notice when I do arts and crafts is my mind gets still, which that to me is like, whoa. So, because I'm always thinking. So I've noticed that when I do things with my hands, and this is why I like to cook too, that anything when I create, my mind goes still and it's still. So I'm doing it more from that perspective, from a mindfulness perspective, to create that stillness in my mind, because it's a recharge moment. So I don't know that it's affected my leadership style, but it certainly helps with a very demanding job to have that mindfulness and that stillness for your mind. I think we all need that every now and then when we have demanding jobs.
Absolutely.
So I would say that's the biggest difference. I don't know that I've become a more creative leader, but yeah.
But I think that recharging piece is really important for leaders. And I love that you brought that up because it's something we don't always let ourselves do.
Yeah.
And finding the space and time, I'm glad you are being able to explore some.
Yeah. I have to still listen. I'm bringing up like one thing that I did. There's more that I need to do. And again, I think what I'm trying to say is it would be so easy going into this empty nesting phase to just completely immerse myself in work, which I'm sure I will because I love what I do. I'm lucky that I love what I do. But I think talking about authenticity, belonging, like the aperture of what's out there, I think it's not good to be completely immersed in work all the time. I think you do need some balance because I think it then makes you a stronger leader at work because you have a broader aperture if you do that.
As a leader of hundreds of people, how do you put an upper limit on what you do?
It's not easy, but it's all about prioritization. I think it's easier when you love what you do. So maybe my limits are a little bit more stretched than they should be, especially as it relates to people and people development. But at the end of the day, that upper limit exists because of my family and my life outside of work. Yeah. And that's where I set those boundaries. Like I love driving. I drive my daughter, who is 17, does not need to be driven. I drive her to school as many days as I can in the morning because she's an extreme night person. I'm a morning person. So it's the one time where we're both in the car for whatever it is, like 20 minutes when I drive her. And we're both there. And there's something about looking at the windshield too, where it's easy to have all kinds of conversations, right? So that's my morning boundary. You know, I ask my assistant to block my calendar so I can drive my daughter as many days as I can. And the same with the evenings. I love to cook. I cook nothing crazy, but I come home and make dinner. It doesn't mean that I won't be on a call. Many people that know me, they know I'll be on a call having a conversation cooking, but then when it's dinner time, it's phones down, it's phones away. And then my team also knows though that I go to bed around 9:30. But then between 5 and 6, there's a lot of activity coming from me. So I warn people, I'm clear about these things. So I think limits is a tough thing because I don't know, that's a hard one. But I think in my case, I have a very strong habits and schedule that help me cope with my demanding schedule.
There's no limit to what we can do at work generally. And so we have to decide where we want to stop it.
I have a lot of travel too. So, and there when you're traveling, you're going from very early in the morning to late at night because you have dinners with customers or teams. Again, I think you do that. And then I think making sure that then there is a time to recharge to do it again is also important.
Fantastic. Oh, it's been so wonderful talking with you today. I really appreciate your time and just thank you again for being so generous to share your journey with our listeners. And I know that it's going to be very inspiring for people to hear about your ability to be able to hold all these things that sometimes feel unholdable. So for our listeners, if you have found this episode helpful, please let us know in the comments which part you like the most if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you'd like to hear more about the Sisters in Leadership program and how it might help you, please visit SisterSmart.com and download the private podcast, which is called the 7-Step Passport to Promotion. I'll put the link down in the show notes for you. And if you want to dive deeper into women's leadership and how to move up in your career, subscribe either on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. I'm on a mission to help more women get into leadership and stay there. So if that's aligned with you, I'd love to have you listen to each episode on SisterSmart Leadership. If you're ready to fully lean into your feminine leadership and get promoted from director to vice president and beyond, hit that subscribe button so you'll get all the episodes to come. And check out the recommended video here to see how women are rising up without playing by the old rules that built these male-dominated industries and systems.